You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Thank you for attending tonight's meeting, the Board of Trustees and the Mayor for Wednesday, September 29th at Village Hall. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item up is a little recognition here. We had a 911 recognition event held in Mizzier Park on 9/11. Very nice sized crowd, probably between 350 and 425. And I thank the volunteers led by Danielle and Ann Ponte and Heather McCormick on the committee and the 18 or so other volunteers for putting out 2,500 plus flags. And we had the Rolling Thunder event held in the MIA Park, 9/17, very nice ceremony. Small crowd, but it was a very nice ceremony. And the Festival in the Falls event held 9/18/21. Here again, very successful, and the crowd was above average, I'd say. So, that said, roll call by the clerk.
Mayor Serino.
Present.
Trustee Sadati.
Here.
Trustee Ponte.
Here.
Trustee Nesnick.
Here.
Trustee Huber.
Present.
Trustee Ruffin.
Here.
Trustee Laricella.
Here.
Village Attorney Wallace.
Here.
Okay, the next item is an authorization to pay bills per approved warrants. Now, normally this is done at the regular meeting of the month, but we are now going to twice a month so that we don't incur any late charges and whatever where bills overlap or aren't ready for the regular board meeting. So they signed off on bills today. So is there a motion to accept the bills as
I'll make
paid?
the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was Adam and who?
Yeah, Adam and I believe,
I did.
You did?
and Fonte.
All right. A month or more ago, the village board asked me to go out and look for an engineering firm to do the work on the alleyway, more specifically the drainage at 10 Market Street. That's over there to where the building burned down on Market Street more than a year ago. I did that, and I reached out to Larry Podgy Consultants. It's a consulting engineering firm in Fishkill. And I sent out to you what they sent to me for you to look at and make a decision soon. Mr. Podgy, Larry Podgy's son, Kristen, is here tonight. He's right there, the blue shirt, to introduce himself and his company to you. And Kristen, do you want to say a few words?
Sure.
By the way, if anyone doesn't know Larry, you could find it. He's almost a spitting image of his father.
I get that a lot. He can't deny me, unfortunately. Thank you to the board for having us and for the opportunity to provide the proposal. Again, my name is Christian Podgy. Larry is my father. Our company is a little over 30 years old. He started the company in '89 after cutting his teeth with his cousin Jay, who was the village engineer for a long time, who you guys I'm sure know and are very familiar with. Also Pete, the current highway super. He was a village resident growing up. We're both town of Wappingers residents now. Our firm is 8 employees. 6 of us are engineers. 2 of us are licensed, my father and I. We have a great deal of different clients that we work with, from municipal to utility companies, charitable organizations, private developers. We're currently the village engineers in the village of Fishkill, and also the town of Unionvale, town of Mamakating in Sullivan County. We were the town of Unionvale engineers for a while too, as well as a handful of other municipalities that we've worked with. Our specialty really is in the water resources area, water, sewer, and stormwater management. I know we've worked closely with John with the Honest Water Coalition for where we represented the village of Fishkill and the town of Unionvale at that time. As John said, he reached out to us about the drainage issues over at 10 Market Street. We met him out there. I was just out there again actually before the meeting, just to take another quick look. We submitted a proposal for developing plans to correct the drainage based on the information that we have at hand. We also included a survey proposal from Ken Salzman, who has done a great deal of work in the area we work closely with. But yeah, I think once we get the survey information, it will be more telling as to what the final design would be. From a bird's eye view, it's a relatively straightforward fix as far as the drainage, just getting the water away from the buildings. I understand that some of the buildings are having issues with water running into the basement, so getting the water to these inlets, into pipes, and away from the buildings. But the survey will provide a little bit more information, as well as once we start working, or once the area starts to get excavated, finding what's underneath those big concrete slabs and underneath the stairs. Those are the real big unknowns at this point. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions about our firm, about our approach, or anything like that. Again, thank you for allowing us to provide the proposal and to come to you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
Again, we have their proposal, and we have the proposal from their surveyor. The village board, along with the village attorney, will review this package that you sent to us, and they will be getting back with me, and I will be getting back with you or Larry. soon.
That's good.
Okay?
Very good.
We meet, next meeting is October 13th, I believe.
So you think Mayor will have something by then?
I would hope so.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. Again, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. But thank you again.
Thank you for
Have a
coming.
good night, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Next on the agenda is Casey Engineering update. You have it all on your agenda. I did review it with Nancy yesterday and again today. The Village Boathouse exterior improvements, the contractor was there today putting up the remaining lights in the parking lot. So that should be done. The next step is to have the building inspector approve the electrical hookup and all that, so we can close that out and gets us that much closer to opening the boathouse up for a three-season use. The EPA brownfield assessment stayed the same as it has been right along. There isn't any changes there. There aren't any changes there. But I would like to draw your attention to Village Route 9 sewer. We really need to get this done. And the holdup at the moment is New York State DOT. They said that we would not be able to proceed with that Route 9 sewer project because there are some manholes that were not at the proper level or grade, and they were going to hold off on granting us permission to go forward until we resolve that. So I sent an email to Nancy, fine. Which ones are they? Well, we don't know. They won't tell us.
Yeah, they're not hard.
So I said, well, that's not acceptable. Either you find out or I'll find out which ones they are, and they should be marked, painted somehow, so we can move along with this and get it going. So she sent me a string of emails that she's had back and forth with DOT, trying to get them to identify the ones that are the problems, but she's not having any success at that. So tomorrow I'll reach out to DOT myself. I know some of the folks up there.
So are these manholes that are just in that area or in general all over?
I think there's one or two in the northbound lane.
There's,
Wow.
they say there's 3 that we should fix.
They
I
were
can't figure out what 3 because there's 15 up there.
These were done by another company a couple years ago when I think our last contract
4?
Contract for it.
Contract 4, yes. And of course, the time period ran out and no one really paid attention until after we gave them their money back. But my thing is, if we're gonna if we were responsible for the ones on Route 9, then I think AT&T should be responsible for the ones on 9D on West Main Street. You know what I mean? If we gotta fix our manholes, I think the telephone company should fix theirs.
You get my vote. But right now, what we need to do
Why
is
are they picking on
identify
us?
the ones we have to fix so we can do the Route 9 sewer project.
Okay.
So I hope to have something for you guys. I'll email you out something soon.
Well, I think, and it might get back to Kevin's point and Pat's point, is the fact that we signed off on these.
Yes.
We signed off that they were completed, and our engineer, which was Casey, signed off on it. Now, subsequent, there was like a 1-year guarantee, and they failed in 1.5 years. So there has to be a discussion about how that happened. Because while they haven't told us which manholes they are, I suspect one of them is up near Wendy's,
Wendy's, Brookside, and there's one in the
Right.
northbound lane also. That-
okay? And when you look at it, you can clearly see that that is below grade. Yeah. So just tell us what they are, and then we can take it from there.
Right, because we have to make sure that these are engineered properly moving forward. If they were engineered properly and we signed off on them, our engineering firm, there's no reason why a year and a half they should fail. So I want to make sure if we're doing them again, that they're engineered properly and inspected properly. You know, so we need to find out what happened there
Right.
in a timely fashion, I suspect would be best.
Well, KC feels that they should be the ones to go forward with the bidding process.
Well, I think I don't think this should have to go out to bid. We do have a contract with Ben Saccone of time and material. We shouldn't have to go out to bid to fix manholes.
No, she means the project, the Route 9
Oh,
sewer.
by the Triumph class.
She's waiting to go forward with the bidding for the sewer work.
Because everything else is all done. The survey's all done, plans have been accepted by Department of Health.
Yeah.
That's ready to go. It's
That should get done, and that has to get done, I firmly believe. And also, Peter Podgy from the Highways wants that done, because the sewer backs up on Route 9. He can only do that work at night. He can only jet that sewer line at night, so that really has to get done.
It will resolve a few issues.
Get in trouble.
When that new line is put in.
I think moreover, the job wasn't done right, and somebody should be held accountable for it,
Relative to the manholes.
to the manholes, the cost.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we can discuss that with our engineers.
This is something that I've learned, and I've learned to listen to our highway super, that after these projects, we gotta go through these projects thoroughly throughout the year and look at them. Because if you don't, then we're into doing this, fixing it again. Like we just caught, there was in the parking lot at Shoeshine Park, I guess Franny Reese Park, it was sinking. So if we didn't catch that then before we paid them off, our highway guys have to fix that.
Well, I'm gonna call the director up in Region 8 tomorrow, and I know who he is, and see if I can get it going. Okay?
Right, okay.
And I'll let you know.
Okay.
I am in receipt of a letter from the Rotary Club here in Wappingers Falls requesting permission to hold a food drive in Mizzier Park on Saturday, October 23rd from 10 to 3 p.m., 5 hours, collecting items which will go to the local food pantries. And they are looking for your approval.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
As requested, I wrote up a job description for a part-time grant writer that I submitted to Dutchess County personnel for their review. We have a full-time grant writer position in our inventory, but we did not have a part-time one. We do now. They approved it. So just for your awareness, if you want me to canvass a list for a part-time grant writer, because it is competitive, it's a competitive position, I can get the list from the county and we can go out and canvass it and see if we can get anybody that's on the list interested in the job. If we do canvass the list and we do not get anyone interested off the list, you would be able to make a provisional appointment of someone who is qualified, meets the requirements of that job, for a period of time until the exam comes up again. Then that provisional person would need to take the exam and be reachable in order to stay in that position. You with me on this? So I would like the board at some point, tell me what you want to do. If you want the list, I write the letter and I get the list and work it. You are not obligated. Once you get the list and you work it and you do find a candidate, you are not obligated to take a person at that time if you're if you desire not to. Okay? So when you all get together, or personnel, let me know, go through the mayor, send me something directly, and I'll request a list and work it.
It's kind of straightforward.
Yeah,
We should just
I think we can approve that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prove it now for me? Okay, I'll order the list tomorrow, and we'll work it. Heather and I will work it.
Well, let's just,
We should make this, we should really look for one, because I don't know if you guys read Nancy's email about a water grant up to $400 million. I mean, I think this would be something good for a grant writer to go through, that we could use their help on. I mean, we need a new water filtration plant.
right.
There's still water infrastructure projects in the village that should be.
We have a lot of issues, we have a lot of projects we could use a grant writer for.
Let's move forward.
So, the issue is, there seems to be some consensus, so is there a motion to approve to process the part-time grant writer?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
That's Lorisella and Ruffin.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. As the mayor pointed out at the last meeting, we are getting close to having to make a decision on this legal marijuana use. And I'll at this point, turn it over to Attorney Wallace.
Well, before you do that. Sure. I went, took a day and, I went to, last Friday to the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge. And on the way there in Great Barrington, we saw a dispensary. And then up at the hotel, the inn, I should say, an inn, they had these brochures. I passed them out to,
I didn't get one.
I think there should have been one.
Oh, there's one. I'll look at his, thanks.
And as we passed through, there were 4 or 5 people in this dispensary buying product. And it's very big up in Great Mountain.
Been big.
Anyway, just for the record. So they've already done the legwork and everything else, and Massachusetts was ahead of the game on that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Margaret. Okay. Or the attorney.
Yeah, let me just introduce Margaret in a second, but this is the first of a series of informational meetings we're going to have about the Marijuana Regulation Act. And today, you're not going to be asked to pass any legislation today, but I wanted to bring yourself and the public up to speed on the scope of the law, the content of the law, the intent of the law, what the law does and doesn't do, and what it allows and doesn't allow. And because any decision that this village makes will have a tremendous fiscal impact, as well as potentially a zoning impact as well, if you decide to allow it in certain areas of the of our zoning code, which as you know is ongoing. Towards that end, we have to have some sort of decision as to what the village is going to do. I would say by the end of November, no later than the end of November, because if there is a referendum that is going to place the agenda before the voters, it has to be passed and acted upon early in the 2022 year, and it has to be done. Anything that we do has to be done by the end of December, or we are deemed to have opted in by default. So if the village board is going to take action, I want the board to be well versed on the law and on the impact of the decision as far as fiscally and legally. So you're going to be asked, there's two components to this law. It is adult use retail dispensary, and it's also an on-site consumption license. I asked Margaret to come today. She used to be a prosecutor in the DA's office here in Dutchess County, and right now she is with the public defender's office. She's well versed on the criminal and decriminalization of this particular law. So I asked her to come to kind of like give you an overview from that perspective, and then we're going to be discussing the fiscal and the other aspects of it as well. All right, so without further ado, Margaret,
Okay.
thanks for coming, by the way.
Thank you for having me. I have a couple of binders here because I actually printed out the full bill text, the legislation, which is quite large and a lot to read. So I had given a copy of this to Trustee Ponte, because she's my trustee and next door neighbor. But I took that back from her tonight so I could reference it. But I'm happy to make copies if people, if that would help. So my name is Margaret Walker. I live at 27 North Mizzier Avenue. And just by way of background, I've been a lawyer with the county for more than 15 years. I was a prosecutor in the Dutchess County DA's office, and for the past 2 years, I've been the director of training with the Dutchess County Public Defender's Office. So as director of training, I do a lot of the education of the lawyers in the office whenever the laws change, which has been a lot lately. And so that's my kind of basis of knowledge for the criminal justice aspect of the new law. But I'm not here tonight in my capacity as a lawyer with the county or a public defender, but rather just to share with you a little overview of the penal law aspect of the legislation. So you may know this already, so pardon me if it's too basic for you, but so basically on March 31 of this year, Penal Law 221, which is the old marijuana law, criminalizing marijuana, was completely repealed and replaced with Penal Law Article 222. And what it does is essentially make it completely lawful to possess up to 3 ounces of marijuana. And actually, one of the other things the new law did was change the word marijuana to cannabis for whatever reason. So we're in the cannabis terminology here. But possession of up to 3 ounces is perfectly legal. If you possess more than 3 ounces, anything up to 16 ounces is only a violation level offense. It's not a crime. It's punishable by a fine only, no jail. And then if you possess over 16 ounces, up to 5 pounds, that is still a crime. That's going to remain a crime. That's an A misdemeanor, which is punishable up to a year in jail. And then at the 5-pound range, it becomes the lowest level felony, an E felony. So between 5 and 10 pounds is an E felony, over 10 pounds, a D felony, and over 100 pounds is a C felony. So the felonies are if convicted of a felony, people can go to prison. But that's an enormous amount of cannabis, as you probably know, which even under the old law, you didn't have a lot of arrests or prosecutions for that kind of high-level possession. But the gist of it is up to 3 ounces is perfectly lawful. There's also something called concentrated cannabis, which is a little bit of a stronger thing than regular cannabis. I don't know that much about it. Maybe some of you do. But so the amount of possession, it goes from ounces to grams, so you'd have to do the conversion, but you're allowed to possess a little bit less to meet those levels if it's concentrated, if it's something considered concentrated cannabis. But the straight cannabis, up to 3 ounces is lawful. You have to be 21 or older, so if you're under 21 and you have any amount of cannabis, you can be charged with the violation, but it's only punishable by a fine. Smoking cannabis is now permissible, so it used to be a B misdemeanor to smoke in public at all, but now you can smoke basically anywhere that you can smoke cigarettes. It's lawful. And that's, in the law, that's by way of reference to the public health law, which talks about where cigarettes can and can't be smoked. But there are some exceptions with respect to cannabis that don't apply to cigarettes. For example, no smoking cannabis in a car that's on a public road, even if the car is not on. And some other examples, but generally, that's the gist. It's a misdemeanor to give cannabis to anyone under the age of 21, so that's going to remain a crime. However, if there's less than a 3-year age difference, so the person is under 21, but the person giving it is 21, let's say, that's a defense. So that's actually not going to be something that's prosecutable. Selling it is remaining illegal, so outside of a licensed dispensary, the selling of cannabis is remaining illegal. So you have to be a licensed seller in order to do that. However, giving it, so if there's no money exchange, that's okay. So I guess private entities can give and share. Importantly for the criminal justice aspect is that vehicle and traffic law, section 1192-4, which is driving while ability impaired by drugs, driving under the influence of cannabis is still a crime. So that's still illegal, which is smart. Another thing that doesn't concern you as much, but the police are interested, is the idea that the odor of cannabis, it used to be that odor of marijuana at a traffic stop would allow law enforcement to basically get everybody out of the car, search the whole car, every container within the car. That's not the case anymore. Odor of marijuana alone is not the basis for a vehicle search at a traffic stop. But if police have reason to believe that somebody's driving under the influence of cannabis, they can still arrest for that DWAI drug crime.
I think the board was more interested in the implementation of, if we opt in, what would the board need to do as far as dispensaries? Would you have one on 9? Could you have one in the village? Could one be in a deli? I think they're looking to make a conscious decision on what they should do when they do opt in.
Yes. So that's something Mr. Wallace can educate more on, because my specialty is more on the criminal justice aspect. But there is a whole section in the new law that's Article 4, adult use licensing and dispensaries, that Mr. Wallace is familiar with. So, and he's right, that in the legislation, there's a provision that the governor said that, municipalities have until the end of this year to enact local law to prohibit a licensed dispensary. So that's why the kind of rush right now. So if you do nothing, it'll be too late in 2022 to kind of prohibit it. And then there's just, it's kind of a lengthy and complicated law in terms of the process of, like, an applicant has a certain time period. They have to notify the municipal clerk before they're going to file an application.
Much like the liquor under SLA, when you're applying for a liquor license, you've seen the 30-day notices to the municipalities. It's going to be regulated just like that. I think SLA is going to be the oversight agency as well.
Yeah.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Pertaining to the criminal aspect. So if somebody purchases it and they can walk anywhere in the village, they can just walk and smoke it by the library or...
Yeah, as long as if their possession is under that 3 ounces, they can smoke a cannabis cigarette.
Even, say, a school
No, I think schools.
entranceway, or is there
schools-
anything?
No,
You're not supposed to smoke on
I think you're not allowed to
No, I'm
smoke
just
cigarettes
saying,
on
if you're
school
walking down the
grounds.
street in front of Wappingers Junior High,
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
kinda what I was-
there's 10 kids sitting on that wall that I used to do when I was
Yeah.
in Wappingers
Yeah.
Junior High.
But that wall is probably considered school grounds, right?
I'm just saying, but the street 5 feet
Next to it.
next to it is not.
Yeah.
I'm
So
just curious as
That's,
to his question.
It's, you have to go into the public health law and look at what's defined as where you can smoke cigarettes. Because
So if you can smoke a cigarette walking down that street past the school, you're gonna be able to smoke a joint?
I think so, unless there's a specific exception with respect to cannabis, with having to be a certain number of feet further away than where you could smoke a cigarette.
There's also county health laws.
Are you allowed to smoke in these places?
So,
Or like, could somebody have like a smoking bar?
So that's another aspect of if there's going to be a dispensary in the village, another aspect is whether you can consume it in the store. So like one exception that I noticed that's interesting is, of course, you're allowed to go into Smokes for Less, for example, a cigar shop, and smoke in there, but you will not be allowed to smoke cannabis. So that's one of the exceptions. You can't smoke cannabis in the store that's only licensed to sell cigarettes and cigars.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so.
But if you're selling the cannabis, would you be able to have?
Use it in there?
Like my thought is, I'm interested in whether or not somebody rents a place, a brick and mortar place in the village of Wappingers in the central like walking area where the families go to the creameries and things like that. And if we're not mindful and we allow that, are we impeding on other people's kind of like not quiet enjoyment, but for lack of a better word, like, you know, a wholesome ability to.
Yeah. That's the concern. I mean, and that's one of the questions is if you do nothing, they are going to be allowed to,
Right.
you know.
Well, we're definitely not going to do nothing.
Okay.
I think.
So
right?
the answer to that, though, is you're going to have a choice. You're going to be asked, there's two aspects of the law. There's the adult use retail dispensary, and there's the on-site consumption license. You can actually adopt one or both.
And we can zone, correct? Like
You
we
can
could
zone,
say-
absolutely. You always have the discretion on the zoning. So you can limit it to the retail corridor of Route 9.
That seems like the important thing that I think we need to really get a handle of as the board. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That you can't stop, you're not going to stop someone from purchasing from one place and bringing it someplace, but if you create friction, you know, with a consumer of anything, you know, the harder you make it to buy something. Not that you want to make it hard to buy it, but I just wonder what happens when like people are, you know, I don't know. Being able to just walk down the street and smoke joints is new to me. That's a new.
Well, you have
I
a
agree. And
It is new, yeah.
you have a situation where there's party walls on a lot of these
What is it called?
party wall, common walls.
Oh,
You know, on
I was
the
thinking
West
party
Main,
wall, like partying.
the West Main Street corridor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the East Main Street corridor, where there's these buildings are attached to one
Yeah.
another. There could be smoke seepage that could be problematic. So I mean that's going to be a consideration. That's where as long as you don't, if you do pass a law and you can't zone it out. So you have to create a reasonable, you know, retail zone for the use and dispensary, whatever law you end up passing.
And like you said, you're going to be potentially subject to some litigation, some claims if you try to,
Yeah.
you know, if there's not a law, if there is a law prohibiting a dispensary, that's potentially a subject for litigation. But also if you prohibit it, or I mean if you allow it, but then you try to limit it, you know, there's always groups that are
That can challenge.
look to challenge it. There's also something in there, I think, right, about making it easier for minorities too. Like there's a racial ethnic piece that's like you have to make sure that you're being careful to give certain breaks and allowances to minorities who apply to open a cannabis dispensary. So there's a lot to it. It's, you know.
There is an aspect of the law that says no retail dispensary or on-site consumption may be located within 500 feet of school grounds.
So
or
consumption.
200. Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Or 200 feet from a house of worship. So there are exceptions automatically built in. And we have a very small geographical village. So it's going to severely limit the areas in which we can zone this. So it might be there's parking.
Yeah.
That's going to come into
There's not a lot of
consideration.
retail opportunities with parking.
No.
Like, you know, planning, you remember, that was constantly an issue.
So yeah, it's going to be one of those, calls you can make to limit the geographical area within the zoning scheme of the village. But that, you know, we could talk about that, and it's going to be discussed, I'm sure, at a public hearing. A couple things I wanted to just add and to touch upon that Margaret brought up. I did send you guys, or I gave you guys a handout, and I should have brought it, another one, a copy of it, but it really summarized the licensing aspect, and it talked about the opt-out process. So there's 5 things that can happen. If the village board wants to opt out of the adult use dispensary or on-site consumption license, it needs to vote on a local law in early December. This would allow a petition to be filed in early to late January for a referendum, which I would recommend that we have with our general election in March. Alternatively, the village board, under Article 9 of the village law, on its own motion, could skip the petition process and place the referendum on the ballot for the March 2022 general election. The third choice is the village could, at its own cost, hold a special election earlier than March 2022. I'm sure John Karsh would not be happy with that particular option. Number 4, the village may opt out of both retail dispensary and on-site consumption, or may choose to only opt out of one type of those licenses. And number 5, if the village board decides to allow retail dispensaries and on-site consumption, no action needs to be taken. And the village would automatically opt in on January 1, 2022. If a municipality does not opt out by the deadline, it will not be able to do so in the future. So that means that if it's allowed in zoning by the end of the year, you can't subsequently pass a local law that opts out. If you opt in, you can't opt out in the future. If you opt out, you can always opt in later on. All right, so does that kind of make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
If you opt out, you can always opt in later on.
What's the process if we do decide as a board and a community to opt out? What's the process to opt in the future? Is that also like a special election? And then notifying the state? How does that work?
If you wanted to opt in later on.
Yeah.
All right, so the question is, if you decide to opt out now, but opt in later on, you would have to do so through legislation, local law.
Repeal the law, right?
Yeah.
That prohibits it.
Do you know what the percentage of tax dollars that are returned back to the municipality is?
That's a good,
Because if it's not a large portion, it may or may not even matter. If we're not getting a substantial amount of that tax revenue and that's just going to the county or it's just going somewhere else, then who cares?
so the count, that's a great question. It's 4% of the total charge is going to be a local tax, okay? And the question becomes
4% of the sale.
yeah. There's
$100 for $100 we
4% of the total
we
amount
get
charged.
$4.
Not necessarily, yeah. So it all depends on whether or not the town of Poughkeepsie and our neighbor to the south, the town of Wappinger, decides to do.
So if they're charging
If they
$10 service fee and a $10 we get we have 4% of that.
if they both opt out, we get all the money. Understand?
So then if they opt in, it's...
If they opt in and we opt in, we
No.
split it.
Split 4%?
Yeah.
Wow, this is
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
this is nothing. 4%.
I wouldn't say nothing.
Well, when you told me Barrington got $1 million
Close
in
to
tax
$1 million bucks.
revenue, I found that to be incredibly, compared to what I expected it to be, I think it means
Well,
not every dollar is getting claimed, because $1 million and, I mean, there's $1 million is almost negligible.
there's not going to be that's a town that has.
No, I know, but I'm saying even at that scope, $1 million, granted, we would never get that. But for the talk of the town that Barrington is, $1 million in tax revenue seemed incredibly small to me. I was almost like, that seemed laughable.
the oversight of this, the oversight agency may not, they're the ones who ultimately will issue a license, okay? They may not they may deny it on the determination that the village can't support two separate dispensaries so close to one another.
Right.
So it could be one of those things that, you know, only one area or one dispensary is granted a license at some point.
In a place that has a dozen pizza places,
Yeah.
so, you know,
Well,
pizza business will go up, though.
it,
Selling. No, nobody ever.
Ice cream?
Pizza? Yeah, ice cream.
so I'm, you know, out of that 4%, I'm sorry, the county gets 1% off, all right? And the remaining 75% gets split between the town and the village.
I would love to know what
So we're getting
Barrington.
1%, right?
No, 3% would be split between the municipalities.
Right, so
I would love,
village.
I would love to know what the money that's getting back to Barrington, what is that percentage?
Well, you can go on the town of Barrington website and,
I'm just talking this through, man.
So for every $100 sold, we get $1.50? Is that what you're basically saying? So with that being said, is there anybody?
that's the floor.
Yeah.
The ceiling would be $3 if the town of Wappinger and the town of Poughkeepsie opt out.
And if it pulls people in.
I doubt that you would pass any zoning. Actually, the town of Poughkeepsie, I don't know it.
Do we know, like, a comparable village of our size, what they've sold, or what it's?
No, because nobody, there's
This is
been
all
no
just too new?
dispensary. The dispensary isn't, that aspect isn't going into effect until next year.
The ones that exist now are medical.
So, yeah, so nobody knows. It's totally up in the air.
Well, theoretically, it is possible that the village could have a dispensary on the Route 9 corridor,
Yeah.
and theoretically, one on West Main Street, in two different towns.
Yes.
It's theoretically possible.
If you allow for zoning on the town of Poughkeepsie side.
Have we heard rumor what Poughkeepsie and Fishkill and Wappingers are gonna do?
I don't know.
No.
If we allow it and they don't, wouldn't that be, interesting? To have all the people traveling from all over the
Yeah.
place to come to the village to buy pot.
Could be a boom.
Look, I will tell you,
I know it looked like
I would just tell you that I know of 4 people who visit Great Barrington regularly.
For that purpose?
Yes.
So let me
I don't even know where that is.
I
Where?
know the town of Beekman.
It's about 85 miles away.
Beekman opted out.
They did.
Yeah. But they don't have a strong commercial corridor base.
They just have strong residential home values.
I want to say LaGrange is going to opt in based upon the supervisor's talk. I'd be surprised if they opt out because they got a terrific commercial corridor on 55.
There are special interests that will probably petition and challenge a local law opting out, and they would be successful, I'm sure, in putting it to the voters. So that may or may not be a consideration for the board.
Well, that's why, maybe better to go with it, but just limit it to the Route 9 corridor where it's not really impacting, village life in the same way. And then that way, people are getting their Scooby snacks and everyone's happy. Probably, right? Because you don't have to look at it. Because I think it's a problem if it's right near the creamery. I really,
Yeah, I agree.
or like, if I honestly wouldn't really want to deal with it. If it was near my business. Not that, just because it's probably cool, but sometimes if it's not, it's not. That's a bummer. It's a lot to deal with when you're a merchant dealing with things like that. It all depends on how the business runs. And
You have the ability to pass local laws that limit or that regulate
We have
Local-
very difficult
yeah.
time regulating or
But
enforcing.
hours, you can
Yeah, yeah.
regulate,
No, I
as
know.
long as you don't make it unreasonably impractical for the business to run.
Right, but things we have now are hard enough to.
Right, well, we
But I don't disagree with you. I mean, we don't want to get into a thing where we're like micromanaging people's. That's my point. It's like, it's great if it's, you know, if your neighbor's great, if your neighbor's great. And when they're not, I know.
Are we allowed
Not
to
fun.
say, like, what areas we allowed to?
Yeah.
set- Like, for an example, like, over on the south side of Valero, over there, and then up on Route 9, and, you know what I mean? Like, different areas like that?
Yes, you will have the opportunity to locally legislate, consistent with your zoning. As long as you don't make it unreasonably impractical for a licensee to, to operate. One question came up about public consumption. MRTA makes cannabis subject to the Clean Indoor Air Act, which prohibits cannabis smoking or vaporizing where tobacco's prohibited. So, like Margaret said, you can't consume it while operating a motor vehicle. They also, you can't consume it in public, in other areas that are barred by the local Department of Health, things like that, in offices, no, in bars, restaurants, things like that, of course, because it's banned under county and state health law. So,
Well, that's kind of my problem about having them be able to smoke inside the shop when they buy it, if they smoke. You know, most people are gonna go drive home now.
well, that's gonna be a problem.
But you have the same thing with bars, you know what I mean? You're not allowed to drink
I
and
know.
drive, but,
But,
Now it's smoke and drive.
right.
So, any questions for Margaret? I brought Dan here because he's been working on this on behalf of our office in the towns and the village that we represent. So, become a little expert on it, right?
Hi. Did you go over their ability to submit opinions to the state on licenses?
The ability to what?
If to submit an opinion letter.
No, why don't you come up and explain that? Yeah.
So in the event that once, say you opt into this and now you have applicants who are applying to either open a dispensary or an on-site consumption facility. This is under the assumption both are allowed. The applicant also has to bring Mr. Carr a copy of his application to the state to get whatever license he's attempting to obtain. You as a board have the ability to submit an opinion letter to the state to say, why or why not you think this particular applicant should be either awarded this license or denied this license based on a number of factors. Can't be unreasonable, can't be arbitrary and capricious, you have to have a legitimate reason. But you don't go silent just by allowing this to go forward. You still, your opinion has to be taken into account by the Office of Cannabis Control.
Is it just our opinion or public opinion?
No, it's the 30-day notice, remember, that you typically get in a liquor license application. That's this process. You can actually pipe up and have an opinion as to somebody who's applying for a liquor license, but typically you have waived them in the past. But if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I don't think that it should be granted because it's really close to a school or it's right next to another bar that already has a liquor license and it will cannibalize that business, that's something that you can, weigh in on. So, as a board, okay?
I think the public also is going to want to weigh in heavily, not specifically on that, but on that letter, but just going forward with this in the future, I mean, people are extremely vocal about whether we have a gas station or if it's open 24 hours a day or anything like that. Putting a distribution
Right.
place next to possibly their home, their business, their area, I think we're gonna get a lot of opinion about that.
Yeah, I mean, the proximity to residential zoning is going to be a consideration, and you have the police power to control that, so.
Greg, what about now that we're in this master plan wrap-up, attempted wrap-up, like should this be commented on?
It would be legislated in or out, depending, what you guys decide or what the village decides.
But I mean, it needs to be part of that, right?
Yeah.
That narrative.
We're gonna have, in the event of an opt-in, we will have the language already ready to go. We're just not going to include it in the final version because we don't know if it's going to opt in or maybe we can do that if you opt out, because you can always opt in later on.
I just think the important thing is that we've learned as a board recently that like things that seem to make sense to us are not always right, like when it comes to the legalese and things. So whatever we would do, we just need to make sure that it's ironclad, that like we have some kind of, if one of the trustees comes to the rest of us and we get a consensus about something, or something seems out of whack, we want to know that we have done everything and articulated it in a way that we're protecting the residents and
And you guys are well within your rights, even if you opt in to, and as Craig said, put time, place, and manner restrictions on those type of businesses. Or, only have a dispensary or only have on-site consumption.
Can you limit how many?
No, that's going to be up to the state. So the regulations are because Governor Hochul just appointed people to run the Cannabis Control Board. So we're still waiting on the regulations to come out. Those are going to come soon. But the gist of it is there is going to be a limit on how many dispensaries or licenses are going to be awarded through the state. I don't know if that's going to be regionally or how they're going to break it down. I know there's a particular provision where some X amount of the licenses have to go to traditionally underserved areas or neighborhoods that were negatively affected by cannabis arrests in the past. So that's going to be something to look out for, but I know there's going to be a cap on it. I just don't know how they're going to the regulations have come out.
Cool.
All right, I think that's enough to avoid information overload today. But we'll be talking about this again, and eventually we're going to have a public hearing, and the public can weigh in, and then you guys can put it to a vote.
I'll schedule another informational for October.
Okay, great. Margaret, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Margaret brought this New York Law Journal article, by the way.
We made copies of the Law Journal article that kind of summarizes it too.
Good.
But not so much the taxation and dispensary part of it, but the criminal justice part of it.
I am in receipt of a resolution 23-2021 of 2021. Resolution granting permission for the Village of Wappingers Falls to apply for a Justice Court Assistance Program JCAP grant. This is a JCAP that they apply for every year, and it's for different things. This particular year, it's for bullet-resistant glass around the courtroom, I'm told. So, whereas the Village of Wappingers Falls Justice Court is eligible for a grant from the State of New York Unified Court System through the Justice Court Assistance Program, and whereas Village of Wappingers Falls Justices Raymond C. Chase Jr. and Richard Fiorelli and Justice Court Clerk Donna Contelmo have recommended an application for such grant to be made. And whereas Village Justices Raymond C. Chase Jr. and Richard Fiorelli and Justice Court Donna Contalmo have prepared an application to the Justice Court Assistance Program grant. Whereas the application is required to be submitted to the State of New York Court Administration by October 7th. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Wappingers Falls hereby authorizes the Village of Wappingers Falls Justice Court to apply for the JCAP grant for 21-22. Grant cycle is up to $21,688, or the exact amount being requested. And be it further resolved that the Village Board hereby authorizes said application to be signed by Mayor Rick Serino, as well as Village Justice Court Raymond Chase and Richard Fiorelli, by and behalf of the Village of Wappingers Falls Justice Court, and further authorizes Justice Court Clerk Donna Contalmo to submit the application to the State Office and Court Administration to comply with the October 7th deadline. So,
I have a motion to introduce this
I'll make that motion.
grant request.
Seconded.
And a second.
roll call vote, Mayor Serino,
Aye.
Trustee Huber,
Aye.
Trustee Sidoti,
Aye.
Trustee Nesnick,
Aye.
Trustee Ruffin,
Aye.
Trustee Ponte,
Aye.
Trustee Larissella.
Aye.
Carried.
I just want to go back to the boathouse since you touched upon it before, but it is. The contractor is doing the work for those lampposts and whatever. As a sidebar to that, since it is the boathouse, the highway crew has moved the playground equipment into the boathouse, cleaned up the inside. All the loose items are put into like the little storage office. The benches are put out into the main floor up against the wall. And they had a couple of Christmas wreaths, decorations, and they've hung a pipe attached with threaded rods down, and I believe they did the second one today, so they'll have all the wreaths when they move them. They got the spot there for all the Christmas decorations. It looks like there'll be and especially if the equipment, the playground equipment gets moved out, and for the time being, it's nice and safe, and we satisfy our commitment with Mr. Fettigan, who's been most generous over the years on a lot of things, especially on this item. But we'll have some storage space in the room, and they did a little set of steps from the main floor into the boathouse. So that process has moved along, and hopefully we'll get that information for Brian, so we can get that 3-season CO, and then move forward to see what we actually need for the 4th season. So that's just a little recap there. So, do we have a motion for executive session, or is there going to be an executive session?
Earlier you had something on here about recreation and moving money. Is that not
Oh,
here
no.
anymore?
That can come right out of the contractual line, according
Okay.
to Jessica.
It was on the earlier,
Yes, I saw it. It's not needed, according to Jessica, it can be
Okay.
accessed through the contractual recreation line.
Very good.
However, since you raised recreation, I'm gonna make another appointment tonight and another appointment for recreation on the 13th. And so I'm going to make an appointment for Danielle Masterson to be on the Recreation Committee because of a few people have requested that she consider being on it. who are already previous members. So is there a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Now, with that said, is there a need for executive session?
I just had one question, maybe it's directed at Mr. Carge. Could you
Yes.
clarify about that memorandum, or that memo regarding the steps? I know you said we couldn't do that tonight because we needed to do.
There are two memorandums of agreement prepared to give salary increases, merit increases to highway superintendent, not superintendent,
Foreman?
foreman, and to the new water employee. What's his name?
Tyler.
So the memorandums of agreements are made and prepared and signed with the exception of the mayor's signature,
Okay.
which I can't speak for him. Once they are approved totally, a resolution is being prepared by Attorney Wise, which I will have by the 13th. On the meeting of the 13th, you can pass the resolution. That is the green light to go ahead and give out the increases.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
It can be discussed because it's a matter of, collective bargaining in executive session, but the vote itself, you have to come out of executive session and record the vote.
I just wanted to make sure there's nothing, no groundwork meeting till late tonight for the next meeting. That was all. Thank you.
Since...
I have something, Mayor, for executive session.
Oh, okay. Since you invoked Attorney Wise's name, Attorney Wise is retiring from the law firm that he's at. And he was keeping 10 clients doing the work that he does in the labor field, and we were one of the clients. So his intention was to work at home. And all was going well until he ran into a snag wherever he lives. I don't know where he lives, with zoning, of having an office in his residence. So until that issue gets resolved, he is going to introduce an attorney October 13th who will, that this attorney is taking his place at the regular law firm. And so he's going to introduce this attorney so that he keeps coverage, if we want it, from this specific attorney until his issue gets resolved with the zoning matter. I just thought I'd share that piece of information.
Yeah. Before we go into executive, there's one other thing, and if this is not the way to do it, somebody let me know. I'm just taking a cue from Trustee Huber in the past, bringing up a resident's concern. So I had gotten an email from Nancy Viscusi, and she has been trying to figure out, I'm just kind of scanning the email right now. There's some village-owned trees and some maintenance issues. And then there was the Central Hudson, a concern with Central Hudson putting up a privacy fence to mitigate the noise on that large piece of equipment we talked about briefly at one point. This is over by the
Wappinger's little cemetery.
No,
the cemetery. She's the one house in, there's this kind of like odd thing, I don't know what it does, but some of you do.
It's a gas regulator system.
So I guess it creates a lot of noise, and she has said, she's just said she's gotten really very little response and she hasn't advanced the ball in any way. So I just wanted to put it out like this way so that hopefully I don't know, it's, you know, she's reaching out to me and I'm trying to find some sort of resolution, but there's the trees that are not maintained, and then this big device that's apparently, it's loud, and it's getting in there in Central Hudson, you know, we allow them to use our property to do these things, and then they don't shield the, I don't know any other ins and outs, if there's any other.
Central Hudson took that, when we allowed them to do that, they were supposed to put screenage
Right.
to block it from that house.
Right.
Because when they came here and talked to the board about it, I raised that concern.
Yeah.
Because I know.
This is a previous board that.
So what can we
previous board.
do to help these people?
We've
I mean, we've talked about it briefly, but now
Yeah.
I'm getting the emails, and, I mean, they're a very decent family, and,
Oh, yeah, no
you know,
doubt.
she's a hard-working woman that works
I've
for
talked
one of the law
I've
offices
asked
here
Greg
in
to see
the
if he can help
village.
us out, maybe box that thing in also.
I mean, it's just like,
Months back.
So this property that you're talking about is
It
actually
flux.
owned by Central Hudson.
okay,
It's a public utility,
okay,
all right? And they built that, you know, under their rights, under the Public Service Commission and all that. And they are the ones who are responsible for maintaining it.
Are they
They're not subject to any site plan or planning board approvals because they're a public utility. So
But
they're
but
exempt.
their plans did have screenage, meaning a green tree that stays green all year round, so you cannot see.
okay, so let's just say
That's
Central
what their
Hudson
plan
has.
had.
So they have a right-of-way specialist that Ms. Viscusi can contact and, you know, make her grievances known and get questions. We unfortunately can't get those answers.
Two questions. This is an honest question, it's just my experience in the planning board. Is Verizon considered a public or no?
Yes.
Okay, because they had to come before planning when they wanted to put some outdoor generators in. And Trustee Ruffin and I were sitting on the planning board at that time, and we required them to put screening up. So they,
On a building they own.
well, outside of a building.
Yeah, so that's a little different.
How is that different though?
Because it was on
It was on their property.
It was on their property that it has a building. within-
Well, that's their property, just because it doesn't have a building.
We're talking about a public improvement.
They own the top.
Okay, well, I just think that it's, as usual, we're impotent, but that's crazy to me that we cannot command some sort of, we can't advocate for these people. That's just crazy to
Well,
me.
it's-
And we're learning that Central Hudson just
It's
is
the
really
same-
a crappy company.
Kind of the same thing.
whatever they
I don't
want.
know exactly how this all happens. I'm having a situation where I live that a state-owned home has broken fences, garbage cans that are not concealed, garbage dumpsters that are not concealed. I make a phone call asking this to be fixed, and we can't touch them because the state owns it. We can't tell them what to do because the state owns it.
I just don't understand how we cannot require them, why they would be not held to a similar standard that if, you know, we would require the dispensary to put up screenage if they had some generator. I just,
They are supposed to have some screenage up.
right, but what we're being told by council right now is they're not subjected to.
No, I know, but there's always an inquiry you can make on behalf.
But KC has the plans where they have screenage up and
Yeah.
on Vespucci's property line.
Right. So what I'm saying, what I'm asking the board, and maybe I should just call Tom, or maybe we should speak with Brian Murphy, Tom Morris or Brian Murphy, but is that if that was agreed upon, why was it not checked off the box? But that's something, you know.
Adam, I think that what I could do is put you in touch with Nancy Clark because she's familiar with that particular project. She was the interface between Central Hudson and the village, and she can at least get this person in touch with the powers that be at Central Hudson and get answers as to why they're not complying with their own plans. They may not be done with the project yet. I don't know. It's still ongoing.
How long has it been there?
Well, I think they're done with the gas
With
regulator.
the gas regulator project, I don't know about that.
At least in the spot where it is on that easement, or in that section right next to the Viscusi's, they're done with that.
I mean,
Now,
just
they're
at the very
working,
least, we're
they're
gonna say-
working on sections of West Main Street doing something with the gas regulator, but that's way far from.
I'll also call Chairman Morris and see if there's anything. And I'll speak with Brian, and I'll take your recommendation too. I just want to find resolution.
No,
like we talked
now,
about.
relative to the trees, you weigh this on the overall, and Trustee Huber can tell you the same thing. If it was up to the Viscusi's, they would take 60 trees down on water department property. So,
Well, that's what I don't care about. I'm not
well,
getting
I'm
involved
just
in those
telling you,
little
so you
things.
have to weigh both. Okay. Now, I agree with them that it was a poor choice of where Central Hudson put this gas regulator station. I believe they should have gone another 30 feet off of 9D and make their little driveway longer, because then you would have been out of their sight. Okay?
Yeah, it's just careless and thoughtless. It's not
On Central
considerate.
Hudson's part, correct.
Okay, well, I brought that up. Thank you.
I'll send you the contact information for Luke Mangles, all right? He's the
Luke.
he's the Central Hudson engineer.
Thank you.
All right,
Send me that information.
sure.
Thank you.
Kevin made a motion, I think.
So we have a motion to go into executive session from Trustee Huber. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See you. Thanks, Margaret.
No, that's just my certification. Oh, no, I'm glad.
Who seconded it?
You need me?
Yeah, just, mine's just